And if that was the case, we would make one appearance in our life and then be gone. We would be disposable PR people. You cannot lie and keep your credibility. And if you think you can get away with a lie, you're even in bigger trouble, because I think you got some bottom line ethics problems in your life. But don't lie, because if you don't know the answer, say you don't know the answer. If it's not your business to answer that, don't answer it. But don't tell somebody a lie and hope that you can get away with it. Believe me, you can take the heat on the truth, but you can never take the heat for a lie. Lying is cheating. Cheaters never win. Winners never cheat. Other rules. Bring the boss in. This is his chance to earn that fat paycheck. Get him up there and let him take the heat. Control your rumors. As Meryl Streep said, the thing about a rumor is most of the time it's not true. Tell people it's not true. If there's a rumor that there's going to be a layoff, get up in front of the news media and say, there's a rumor that there's going to be layoffs. Our company is saying now that we're not planning any layoffs until we get a decision from the DEQ. Let them know what the truth is, because the truth is not nearly as dangerous as a rumor. Centralize all information, make sure that the right people know and the same people know all the time. Update it frequently with the news media. Newspapers in the olden days used to publish every hour. Now the Baton Rouge afternoon paper has a 10 o'clock deadline and an 11 o'clock deadline. So if you have something that's really newsworthy, they can update it for the last edition. The Morning Advocate just finally goes to bed, I think finally at about 11 o'clock at night. So they have a deadline usually of 6 p.m., but they can go to 11. The New Orleans paper, now that it's merged into one newspaper, has several deadlines all day long. Know that you can update it during those times and that reporters are going to be looking for fresh information for those. TV stations basically have your 12, 5, and 6, but some of them are getting a little more exotic now. One Baton Rouge station is now on every hour on Cablevision, giving a 5-minute update. So you have to update your information all day long to keep it fresh. And control the access. If you've got a crisis situation, the last thing you need is reporters roaming all over your building. Department of Labor had a major fire down here in the Baton Rouge office. The last thing you need is reporters running through the building trying to get great shots of the fire burning up and employees running out. It's a hard thing to do to control access, but you've got to get your security people involved, you enlist employees, whatever you need to control access, because one, it may be a danger to them, and secondly, the type of information that can be gained in uncontrolled access can be very damaging to your agency or to your company. And so, one, you want to be concerned about their safety, but secondly, you also have to be concerned about what images are going to be portrayed. How something looks in a crisis situation is, sometimes it looks different when you see it on the 6 p.m. news. Somebody running out of a building, maybe holding their hand over their mouth or something like that, it looks like a natural reaction at the time, but it looks so dangerous on the 6 p.m. news. So control the access. That's a hard thing to do. They got helicopters and stuff now. Of course, they've always had long lenses. We've got a tape. Do we have time to show that talks about a crisis situation?
I think we have to take time. We're running.
Yeah.
How much longer?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. Now that you've sort of gotten the ground rules, let's look at a specific incident. Put yourself in the place of the man who's being interviewed and see how you would react.
Careful.
When an accident happens on public property during the transportation of a product, a company suddenly can become what's known as an uninvited guest. Having an accident on company property is one thing. Having it on a public street or highway is something else altogether. When representatives of the company arrive, they'll be faced with a tricky situation, especially if hazardous material is involved. The public will be frightened and perhaps even hostile to the company, and may not understand at all if the problem isn't cleared up right away. At an accident site, any company employee who talks to the media becomes, for that brief time, a company spokesman, whether or not he's been trained as one. Handled properly, a public statement can reduce fear and hostility and can prove that the company is there to help. But if it's handled wrong, an interview can simply make things worse. Tom Grady is a company veteran who knows all about how to work with the dangerous chemicals which have spilled in this tank truck accident. Unfortunately, though, he does not know just yet how to work with the news media.
That methanol's a bad actor, John. If that stuff goes up, we'll never hear the end of it. See if we can button this up as quick as possible, okay?
Are you from Interstate Chemical Company?
Why, yes, I am.
Your name, please?
Grady. I'm the second shift supervisor.
First name?
T.W.
Would you mind answering a few questions for us about what's happened here?
Well, I don't really know too much about what's going on out here yet, but okay.
Okay, if we could just have you stand right over here so that we can get a good shot of the truck in the background. Okay, Jimmy? Mr. Grady, would you mind telling us what you know so far?
Well, like I said, I just got here, but I can tell you what I've heard so far. That truck left our plant about an hour ago. The next thing we knew, the sheriff called and told us it had gone into a ditch.
Is there any word on how it happened?
Not for sure, but they tell me that the kid in the car tried to pass on a curve back there and cut back in front of our truck. It sounded like he was probably drunk.
Methanol has spilled all around the truck. Just how dangerous is it?
Oh, we get little methanol spills all the time, you know. It's not that bad at all. Just don't get it on you or in you, and you'll be okay. Of course, I wouldn't want to see anybody light a match around it either.
What's happening down there now?
Well, they're spraying water on it now, so it's less likely to catch fire that way. Say, John, would you see that they build up that dam a little better on the backside?
The evacuation. When are people going to be able to get back into their homes?
There's no telling. You know, this is just my own personal opinion now, but I think some of those folks are overdoing it just a little bit. I mean, there's no way methanol can carry a mile on a day like today.
So are you saying that there shouldn't have been an evacuation?
Bob, all I'm telling is that some of our local politicians have been known to grandstand just a little bit around election time, you know, but let's put that off the record. My boss plays golf with some of those guys.
There is a school just a couple of miles east of here. What if the accident had happened near that?
Well, in that case, I'd say we could have some real trouble. If you get a methanol spill like this and the wind is just right, then you could end up with a real bad situation.
What kinds of injuries could there be?
Well, if you get it on you, it can cause dehydration of the skin or oxidation. If you inhale the fumes, it messes up the insides of your lungs. And, of course, there's always the problem of an explosion.
Do you have the names of the drivers involved?
The tanker driver's named L.D. Barnett. The other fellow's name is Paul somebody, Flaherty, something like that. He was pinned in there for quite a while from what I hear. It sounded like it was hurt pretty bad.
How much damage do you estimate altogether?
Oh, there's no way to tell, Sugar. That truckload of methanol alone retails for several $1,000s. It looks like we lost a bunch of it. Probably cost another $20,000 just to patch up the tanker.
Do you have any idea how long it will be before you get this accident cleaned up?
I can't really say.
Will Interstate Chemical take responsibility for this accident?
The trucking company is supposed to take the responsibility for the cargo, but Interstate's a good corporate citizen. We'll take our share of the responsibility for it. Sure.
When was the last time something like this happened to one of your trucks?
Oh, I guess the last bad one was 4 or 5 years ago. We had a tank truck full of methanol, about the size of this one, rolled over on us near Hazleton. Burned up 2 people. Oh, it sure was a mess.
Were there any lawsuits involved in that accident?
No comment on that.
Okay, then. What exactly is methanol used for?
Well, methanol is a chemical intermediate. It's a member of the chemical family of alkaloxides. It has a specific gravity of 0.79 at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It's got a vapor pressure of 4.55 psi at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And the boiling point of 148.4 Fahrenheit. The lower flammability limit is 6.7%.
Is there anyone else at Interstate Chemical we can ask to get more information about this?
No, those boys are pretty busy back there right now. I don't think you ought to bother them at all.
All right, sir, thank you very much. I think that just about does it. Okay, Jimmy, let's go shoot some B-roll and head on back.
Say, could Interstate take a look at your story before you put it on the air? We don't want to end up looking too bad, you know. And, honey, if there's ever anything you need at all, you just let me know, okay?
As it turned out, Tom had given far more than was needed. And Tom didn't get to see the story until everyone else did on the local newscasts.
While the injured are being cared for at County Memorial Hospital, a team is working feverishly to clean up the dangerous methanol spill here at the accident site. Tom Grady, a spokesman for Interstate Chemical Company, told us how the accident happened.
Tell me that the kid in the car tried to pass on a curve back there and cut back in front of our truck. It sounded like he was probably drunk.
Investigators say they don't know the cause of the accident, nor they say is there any evidence at this point that drinking was involved. Interstate is giving a conflicting picture of just how dangerous methanol really is. Initially, Interstate downplayed the hazards and questioned the evacuation.
We get little methanol spills all the time, you know. It's not that bad at all. I think some of those folks are overdoing it just a little bit.
So are you saying that there shouldn't have been an evacuation?
Above all I'm telling you is that some of our local politicians have been known to grandstand just a little bit around election time.
But only moments later, Grady, an expert on hazardous chemicals, painted a grim picture of what could have happened if the methanol had spilled near Lincoln Elementary School just 3 miles down the road.
Well, in that case, I'd say we could have some real trouble. If you inhale the fumes, it messes up the insides of your lungs, and, of course, there's always the problem of an explosion.
Extremely dangerous methanol. A spokesman for the chemical company told reporters that the driver of the late model compact car was drunk.
The tanker driver's name is L.D. Barnett. The other driver is Paul Flaherty. He was pinned in there for quite a while from what I hear. Sounded like he was hurt pretty bad.
Grady says 2 people burned to death in a similar accident less than 3 years ago.
You've just seen a demonstration of more than 30 of the common mistakes we can make in dealing with the news media. Stop the program now and see if you can analyze what went wrong for Tom Grady. Oh, and don't worry about Tom. In part 2, he gets a second chance.
Okay, what did he do wrong? He showed up. Makes you glad this guy's not on your team, right? Yeah, we do all have one, and I think it's important to recognize those people and keep them away from the news media. What else did he do wrong? He lied. And it came back to haunt him, didn't it? Said a whole lot of stuff he didn't need to say. He broke every rule, let's face it. He didn't research the subject before he got there. He didn't even know what the situation was. And there he was on the 6 o'clock news telling everybody what the situation was. Repeating rumor, unfounded information that all of a sudden gets on the news as though it's fact. I personally, as a former female reporter, would have taken great pride in burning him after he called me sugar and honey. He would have learned the degree of my professionalism after that. He was giving conflicting information. He was telling us how dangerous it was, and then he was lighting up a cigarette. He was responding to what-if questions. He talked about things that had happened in the past. Now, that brings up kind of an interesting point of, do you tell everything you know? No, you don't have to tell them about the stuff that happened 2 or 3 years ago. Let them find that out on their own. Or maybe if they ask you the question, you've got to respond to it. But he just sort of volunteered all the negative information he could think of about his company. No chain of command here. People weren't notified. The lady finds out about it over the radio. Bad situation. Certainly, you know, these things happen, but you try to avoid them at all costs. What else did he do? Anybody recognize anything else?
Put his sunglasses on, it looks like he's trying to hide something from the comments right before that.
Good point. We didn't talk about that earlier. Wore sunglasses. If you wear glasses, you wear glasses. If you're on television, you wear your glasses. If you can wear contact lenses, great. If you can see without your glasses, don't wear them because they glare. But don't wear sunglasses on TV under any circumstances because you look like a mafioso. And if you have the darkening lenses, the kind that photographs, try not to wear those because they darken on you when the TV lights turn on. And the longer you're interviewed, the darker your lenses get.
Also, research has shown that people perceive those wearing sunglasses as something to hide, a psychological thing. Surprisingly, at one time, this may no longer be true, and I hate it because my husband wears a beard, but beards are perceived as a being a, sort of subtle propaganda.
Even on professors?
Even
Well, let's say maybe that.
yeah, that could be your image. That could be your image. Most common trick questions that the news media will use, and believe me, these guys are trained in this. I know it sounds like I'm seeing conspiracies behind every bush, but they are trained to ask questions to provoke responses that will give newsworthy events. These are A or B questions. Is it A or is it B? Which is the more important parish in terms of road projects, East Baton Rouge or Orleans? Maybe it's neither. But anyway, you're forced to give an answer if you respond to that the way that question is asked, where it creates a priority system. And you can give a wrong answer by responding to this question as it's asked. They say questions. That's, the third party sort of thing, like, oh, well, the environmentalists say this project isn't safe. Well, you don't know what they said. You're responding to this ghost out here. You haven't seen it. You haven't talked to them. They are putting you in a position of responding to rumors or to other person's statements that you don't have the full benefit of knowledge to. And so you give a response that maybe is not appropriate, What-if questions. Now, that's the biggest one that news media asks you, because they go out, they think they've got this great story, and they go out to this spill site, and it's a pretty good story, but what if it had happened by the school? What if the Exxon explosion had occurred at a time when everybody was out of the control room? What if the fire in your building had occurred during working hours? What if there had been a school bus on that bridge? The what-if question is the most commonly asked one, and God, don't answer the what-if question. Don't answer it. Don't ever answer a what-if question. That's speculation, and speculation will get you into trouble because it hasn't occurred. Deal only with what has occurred. Don't speculate.
Well, if you don't answer and the people realize that, it looks more conspicuous, right? What do you do?
Best answer in the world for a speculation question. Sally.
That's far too important an issue to speculate on. Or I can't speculate on something with that impact. That's particular.
Another technique reporters use is called the pause. You are talking. You finish saying what you're going to say. You stop. They don't say anything. So you've been trained in manners your whole life. You feel like, a lull in the conversation shows poor breeding, and so you continue to talk. About then is when you start to say the things that you wish you had never said.
Could I say that what you're saying right here about the pause, you actually have more control over that than they do. They have to avoid dead air. If you get in trouble and pause, they're in more trouble than you are.
Mm-hmm. If they're in a live situation, if they're in a tape situation, or if you're talking to a newspaper reporter, the pause is the technique that they use to get more information out of you. The pause you can use against them. That's a good point. You can use it against them in a live interview situation. And then,
one of my favorite things there is that when they do this pause, they say, did I answer that question for you? Because what you do is you throw the ball back to them and they have to.
yeah. And off-the-wall questions. I mean, one day, recently, I was sitting in my office, and our facility had been temporarily closed down by the DEQ. And there's another garbage facility down the road, and the people from Lafayette call me, a radio station from Lafayette calls me and says, how does this closure affect Lafayette's garbage? Well, it doesn't. I mean, it's an off-the-wall question. They'll ask you things that have nothing to do with your business or your point of view. You'll be conducting a public hearing about a certain road expansion project, and somebody gets up and wants to talk about the one that occurred 2 years ago on the other side of the parish. It's off the wall. You don't need to answer those questions because they're diluting your message. They're getting away from the issue at hand. Now, how do you answer any of these trick questions? Well, you always give a direct answer, and it's always a brief, short, clipped statement. Don't ramble on and on with all these subjective clauses and so on like that, because it loses its point, and by the time they edit it down, then you don't know what you've said anyway. Don't know, won't say. I don't know the answer. don't ever be afraid to say, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I'll find out for you. I can't say the answer. That's a speculative question. I can't say what would have happened. It's not, that becomes a unsexy answer, and they don't put it in the newspaper. The other technique, if you want to get a little tricky on them, if they ask you a question that's, I wish I hadn't asked that question, or if they ask you a question that's a trick question, say, oh, excuse me, would you repeat that question? Usually when they repeat a question, it's not as inflammatory. It is in a different form so that you understand it. They think you're understanding it. And it's an easier question to answer. 9 times out of 10, if you ask them to repeat the question, when they repeat it, it'll be a better to answer question. So if you really get stuck, ask them to repeat the question, and you might luck out. And then finally, you do not, if they ask you a negative question, you answer it not as asked. If they ask you an A or a B question, you don't answer it A or B. If they ask you a they say question, just don't answer it as asked. So reframe it. And you see people do this all the time. If you watch these live interview programs, these national figures who are on Firing Line or the Sunday morning programs, those types of things, they ask him, well, you know, where's the foreign policy headed? You know, and he turns around and he talks about something else. Domestic issues are our major concern. I mean, it's not as asked. Yeah, more towny question. When did you stop beating your wife questions? You know, don't answer them as asked. Now, let's see the good way to do this.
John, go ahead and suit up. I'll be with you in just a moment.
Excuse me, are you from Interstate Chemical Company?
Yes, I am. I'm the second shift supervisor, and my name is Tom Grady.
Would you mind answering a few questions for us about what's happened out here today?
I'll be happy to talk with you. Step right over here just a second. I'll tell you everything that I know. That tank truck left our plant carrying a load of methanol when it had the accident about an hour ago. Now, both the tank truck driver and the other driver have been injured, but I don't have any information yet as to how badly they were hurt. There has been some ethanol spilled, but no one's been injured by the spill. We are keeping everyone away but the cleanup crew because of the fire hazard.
Do you have any idea how much the cost of the damage is going to be?
I don't think that's important right now. I think the main thing is to keep everybody safe and to get the material cleaned up as quickly as possible. I'm really just here to give technical advice and counsel to the authorities. The man in charge out here is Dudley Atkins. He's the fire chief. He's really the best one to give you the information. Incidentally, they have set up a place for interviews over there by the old oak tree. I think the chief is headed over that way right now. In the meantime, I've got an awful lot of work to do, and I better get to it, so thanks a lot.
Well, do you think... Are you from Interstate Chemical Company?
Good, I'll catch up with you. Yes, I am. I'm the second shift supervisor. My name is Tom Grady.
Would you mind standing over here in front of the wreck?
Please, I'm really not the best one for you to talk to. The man in charge out here is the fire chief. I think it'd be a lot better if you talked to him. I've got an awful lot of work to do. I'm only in charge of giving technical assistance to the carrier of the trucking company. If you need any technical assistance, I'll be more than happy to help you out just as soon as I get situated
How
out here.
dangerous is the chemical right now?
Please, I've got an awful lot of work to do. I'll be more than happy to talk to you just as soon as I get a chance to get some of the facts. Thanks. I've got to go to work.
What do you think?
Okay.
Most of us don't get the second chance Tom did. So it makes good sense to plan ahead. In a volatile situation such as the one you've seen today, it's crucial that you reduce the fears of the public, that you try to defuse any hostility there may be towards your company, and that you make it absolutely clear that you're there only to give advice, guidance, and counsel to the authorities who are in charge. Whatever your company policy is, it won't do you any good unless you learn it and practice it. Many companies keep their supervisors and management on their toes by staging occasional crisis fire drills complete with mock news interviews. How you get the practice is your business, but dealing safely and effectively with the news media does take practice. And Tom Grady would tell you it's well worth the trouble. Planning ahead for an emergency just makes good sense.
The no comment situation is a tough one to be in. You don't have any information or it's not your business to comment, but you know you feel obliged that this person has called you, handle it. And that you have important things to do, and what they're doing is important, but there are other people who are assigned to cover that. Being polite, reflecting it, and even though they're hounding you and following you, set about on your course of business. And you know, that stuff doesn't usually end up on TV. Occasionally, the White House reporters kind of like to show Reagan or Bush in a negative sense that they're going out to the airplane and everybody's yelling questions at them, and they just go, you know, they ignore all the questions. Reagan used to also have a real good line. Can't hear you. That one was real good. But since most of us are not usually running toward airplanes or anything like that, we can't do it. We'll field a few questions while we're setting up here for television interviews. Oh, I forgot to put on. I need to get some. I'm sorry, I just dropped the microphone. I didn't make friends with the audio person, which is another thing. When television people come out, be nicer to the cameraman than you are to the reporter. The cameraman's going to decide what you look like on that television. The cameraman's going to be the one shooting it. The cameraman's going to be the one editing it. And they're usually overlooked by everybody. Find out their name, shake their hand, call them by name, tell them goodbye at the end. I'm telling you, the cameraman makes or breaks you. The reporter puts the words up. Most people are cooking dinner or fussing at the kids or sleeping, and they don't really listen to TV. They kind of watch TV. They see the images. Okay. I had just sort of looked over some names here of people and that had interesting job descriptions. But first, somebody's got to tell me what LSBRPELS is.
Okay. Louisiana State Board of Registration for Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors.
Tell me what you do, Paul. In 17 seconds or less.
Register engineers and surveyors for the state.
Okay, come on down, Paul. Yeah. Okay, we're going to assume this is, not a real confrontational type thing. You getting all set up? So this is the registered engineers. The camera's not on now. The registered engineers.
All states register engineers and land surveyors, and this is a board that does this.
Okay, so you all give certificates to the engineers and the land surveyors. Is there a difference between the two?
Yes, there is. One does engineering, one does surveying, land surveying.
So they have to qualify separately?
Separately.
Okay. What's the difference?
The difference between the two?
Mm-hmm.
They both have college degrees at this time. Surveyors they do land surveying versus engineering work. The engineers do the engineering, and the land surveyors measure land boundaries and so forth.
Mm-hmm. The point I'm trying to make here is that you assume the most simple facts about your agency and about your profession that an outsider would not even know. And it actually kind of caught you off guard that I said, what's the difference? You just assumed everybody knows all these detailed things that you know. So you have to be able to respond to that, in a quick manner and make it understandable to the average person. Okay, we'll start off with a good softball question. We'll see how far he hits it. What's going on in your agency?
Oh, it's quite busy. It's enforcing the law that the law requires.
What kind of problems do y'all run into that you have to enforce the laws?
It administers the examinations for the, to become different engineers or land surveyor.
Well, what if there's a problem with an engineer? What do you do then?
What kind of problem are you thinking about?
Good response. Well, what if an engineer isn't doing something safely? I mean, we've heard about engineers, buildings that have collapsed and bridges that have fallen down.
Here in the state of Louisiana?
Well, just in different places. They're good.
I know of none in the state of Louisiana.
Well, good. So does your agency rely on the legislature for funding?
No, we don't.
Oh, so you're
completely independent.
So you're not involved in the Capitol at all? So there's no politics
No
then?
politics whatsoever.
Paul doesn't need this training. Paul is super. Good, thank you. In terms of appearance, this is good. You always want to look like you have an aggressive posture. So you want to move forward and sit on the first third of your chair. Move forward. A little farther. You can fit on it. Sit up straight. Okay. This gives a very aggressive, alert appearance as opposed to sort of this. You have to remember the television lens is not an accurate lens. It's a slightly convex lens, and so if you sit back, you're going to actually look a little rounder than you did. And face it, you know, you always hear television puts 15 pounds on people. In my case, it puts 40, 50 pounds on, I can tell you that. So you never want to directly face a TV camera, never. It makes your face look flat. It makes your body look wide. You always want, and you'll see TV reporters do this all the time. See, you'll notice all this stuff now when you go back and watch TV. You turn at a direct angle, and then you can't see my feet, and then cock back into a 1/4 turn, okay, so that you're facing at a 45-degree angle, the television. You will not look as wide. Your features will be more attractive because your head is turned and so your neck is slimmed down. It's a much better pose to be in. So even when you're on one of these programs, you want eye contact, but you don't want to directly face the camera. You just don't look as attractive. And a lot of times for men, too, their jackets pull open and that sort of thing. So you're a lot luckier. Al, what's your job?
I'm Assistant Public Works Director for Calcasieu Parish.
And that covers everything in the city as well as the parish?
No, just in the rural areas, the outlying areas.
Oh, so you don't have anything to do with the city?
Correct.
Okay. And what does Public Works cover?
Public Works covers basically a highway department, road maintenance.
So y'all are responsible for spraying the herbicides on the side of the road?
Correct.
And what about the complaints we're hearing about that now?
We're not getting any complaints.
Oh, but, you know, we've heard that environmental groups are opposing this.
Well, not in our area.
So y'all intend to continue spraying?
Correct.
Okay. Does road maintenance include all of the state highway projects as well? And can we expect in Calcasieu Parish to see some benefits from these taxes we're paying now on the new tax plan?
You went a little too long on that question. I missed what you were asking.
Okay. Are we going to get any new roads as a result of the tax plan?
In Calcasieu Parish, we will derive some funding from the state tax highway plan.
How's the agency fixed financially?
Calcasieu Parish Public Works Department?
Yes.
We're well financed at this time. We have a ongoing dedicated tax for our Public Works Department, and we have the funding we need to do the job with now.
What's the most important job you're working on?
We don't really have just general maintenance is what we're mainly doing right now. We have no large projects going. We have some capital improvement, road improvement projects at this time, but no special projects.
Okay. Let me just stop since the camera's not working just to say this was a great opportunity to plug either a project that you want to get funded, to push something in the public opinion. You know, at this point, you know, whenever you see an opportunity to push something that you have, you know you're going to be doing a television interview, think of some opportunities that you can create for a special project that you need, like we really need to start on our drainage funding study, or we really need to do this. You know, so
one of the big things we do with the news media there is before we do an interview is we have a pretty good relationship with the news media, so we sit down with them and talk about what we're going to talk about before we go on camera. So you know where you're coming from, you know what you're going to be telling them, and you have a direction that you're going in.
So what if you get in a situation where the reporter says, I understand that the audit has been released on the DPW and that there's $100,000 unaccounted for in the director's office?
We don't have that problem. We haven't had that problem.
No, what if this is a real question now?
If it's a real question, then I would have an answer for it. But we've never had the problem.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your agency? You missed your opportunity.
I know.
Bridging is the technique that you use to go from the negative question to the positive answer. You bridge. That's a good question. Let me tell you about. You in effect want to create a demilitarized zone between the two, because your immediate response is to sort of jump in and maybe be hostile or maybe be defensive. So you want to bridge between the two zones. And when you're bridging, you always want to use your key words. We're concerned about the safety, we're a public agency, and we're responsive. Use your key words in the bridge here so that you're setting up an authoritative, responsive answer to their question. And even though you're not responding to their question, even though you're not answering their question, you can appear to be doing that. So bridging is a tough thing. You've got to practice it. It's really good at public hearings, too, if you have to conduct those, if you get into a situation. Everybody that looks cool and calm on television isn't. I mean, they get up and take their jackets off, and they're wet down to the waist. They've been. The major thing that you can do is, number one, forget about the camera. Think about the cameraman, think about the person who's talking to you, but forget about the camera as such. Breathe regularly. It's strange, but when you get nervous, what's the first thing you do? You hold your breath, you know? So you have to think, breathe, breathe, breathe. And before you start the interview, just have a little bit of mental block-out time where you take a couple of good breaths and you get yourself into a breathing rhythm, because you literally hold your breath when you talk. When you're talking, you're not breathing. You stop and you breathe. So you get real nervous and you quit breathing before you even start. So do that. Shake, loosen up. You know, try not to be too focused. Think about your message. Think about your message. And I think when all else fails, remember to smile. Because when you smile, you are more relaxed. That is the most vulnerable time that you have. Smile, and you've relaxed your facial muscles. Hopefully you're into a good breathing rhythm at that point, and it'll help you carry through. If you are just unbearably nervous and you're stuttering and you can't put your sentences correctly and you've used the wrong verb tense and everything, just ask the guy, particularly, hopefully this isn't a live interview, hey, can we stop and start over again? Because and then you won't be as nervous. If you can spend a little bit of time in advance talking to the reporter, too, it might help, you know, keep you from being so nervous. Pause after they ask you a question. Don't just jump in with your response and then all of a sudden get nervous. Think about it for just a second, what you're going to say. You know, most people have home video cameras now. And more than anything, you can probably just examine yourself on that video camera. Not so much in an interview situation, but if you're just filming, say, a party at your house, your kid's birthday or something like that, what do you look like on television? What do you look like through the eye of the camera? And you'll notice that, you know, have you ever noticed when you look at these home videos that they'll be showing, say, a room of people, and there's somebody that doesn't know that the camera's on, and they're like, they have this real flat, serious look on their face, and it just really, it sends a real bad message. So smile is one of the biggest things that you can do, and most men feel like they have to be so stern and so serious, but it really does help you relax a lot if you smile. It makes you appear more human. Now, I have mixed feelings about this phrase, too. I'm glad you asked that question. You know, you hear that a lot, and it's a good icebreaker. It gets, sometimes when you start to talk, your voice goes up like that or something. It's a good way to start off. It's a non-answer. They're not going to put it on the air. But it gets your voice rolling. It gets you breathing. It gets you less nervous. Maybe kind of like start off with something. A lot of people will also use the technique of, I'm glad you asked that question, or they'll call the reporter by name to start to feel a little more comfortable. You know, they'll say, well, Vince, I'm glad you asked that question, or so that sometimes will help you sort of get rolling, too. One last caveat that I'll throw out. I've got this little sign taped to my telephone. I have it taped inside my day timer. It's a little phrase that I live and die by. It's a prayer. It says, "Oh, Lord, let me choose my words carefully today, because tomorrow I may have to eat them." That is the #1 rule in dealing with the news media. Choose your words carefully.